Hello and welcome to another episode of the ADHD Goals podcast. I'm very excited to introduce my next guest. She is Laurie Singer, a licensed psychotherapist and national board certified behavior analyst. She is also an author of You're Not Crazy, Living with Anxiety, Obsessions and Fetishes. And you also run Laurie Singer Behavioral Services, which specializes in behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
How do you do?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yes, I've had a wonderful day so far, but you are just starting your morning, so I hope you're
I am.
feeling nice and fresh.
I am. Mornings are great for me. I am definitely a morning person.
Jolly good. I mean, I think I go in and out of being a morning person, an evening person, but I think obviously not at the same time. I go through phases where if I sleep well and I get up nice and early, I think if I get up nice and early straight away, then that's a good day to be a morning person. But if I linger a little bit and don't really get started, that's when it takes a little longer to get going. Well, anyway, welcome to the show. And I wonder if we could start by finding out a little bit more about you yourself and I suppose your journey, your experience with ADHD.
So my experience was I wish I would have known this sooner, but
Uh-huh.
because of my age, I think back in the day when I was in school, nobody really paid attention to why some of the kids in the classroom, like myself, couldn't sit still, were always being sent to the principal's office, didn't get their homework done, had sloppy writing, always talked in class. I think, I look back on it now and I had horrible self-esteem. I was really good in sports as I was younger,
Hmm.
so that helped me out a lot. But my grades, I think back then too, I think they kind of just pushed you along. They didn't, there was no help really for kids like me. And it wasn't until I got married and had my first child after I was pretty young. I was 21 when I got married, 22 when I had my daughter, and I started running races back then. I
Yeah.
started running and I was doing really well. So that was helping with my self-esteem, but it also taught me how to plan. So this is where my ADHD kind of got reined in the fact that I would pick an event that was maybe a month away and I would have a planner and I would start to structure my workout schedules in that planner.
Mm.
And that's how I became successful at running. And then I went to the local college. I mean, I barely graduated high school. I had to
Mm.
fly to a different state and live with a different relative just to graduate. My grades were so poor. But when I went to junior college here, I finally went to junior college and I applied the same skills that I used for training for an event to study in school. And I ended up graduating, if you can believe this, valedictorian of the junior college, got into UCLA, got, my first master's degree, got my own business, but everything. And then I wasn't diagnosed till I was in my 50s. And it was interesting because I was at a board meeting and I was giving a speech. And all of a sudden I looked out the window and I said, look at the size of that squirrel. And I was presenting and everybody's looking at me like, what is she talking about? And I left the meeting and one of the psychologists said, he was a good friend of mine. He said, hey, Laurie, have you ever thought about going on medication? And I said, well, why would I need medication? And he said, well, for your ADHD. And I said,
Yeah.
me? And I have a license to diagnose people, and I never even thought of looking at myself. And so I opened up the DSM-5 and I looked under ADHD with hyperactivity,
Mm.
and they could have had a picture of me in that
Mm.
book. I just couldn't believe it. And I thought all these years, and then I was able to further investigate and how it affects has always affected my relationship with people, the events that I sign up for, my business in itself. I mean, when I started back to school, I had no idea it was going to take me where it took me. I just did it. Well, I did it mainly because my son had passed away and
Right.
of cancer. Yes. And I saw how many families really suffered with the loss of a child and how it just ripped families apart.
Mm.
And I wanted to try and help those families. So that's really why I started it. And so I have empathy with families, with anybody that is struggling. And I think I could identify as well because of myself. I
Mm.
struggled. I was just a horrible student. I always felt bad about myself. Even now, with all of my credentials and the success, it's still hard for me to believe that, no, you are intelligent. And it's, you're just, you had to compensate all these years and now you're able to figure out what works for you. And I think it's important for people to learn how this is, let's find out what works for you
Mm.
and then help you move forward in life, because not everybody learns the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, I forgot where I was.
Yeah. Well, I just from that sort of explanation there of your past, I've got so many questions to ask. So
Sure.
I'll take this moment to throw one at you. So what interested me then when you said, oh, I wish I'd have found out sooner because if I look back at my schooling. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the typical because, and this is the gender and ADHD thing. I thought you were going to say my ADHD was missed because no one knew about ADHD in girls because they all focused on boys. But then you said that you sort of were restless and almost like that typical ADHD boy that everybody is familiar with from the research a long time ago. So what interested me is because boys were being labeled with ADHD, and so in that way, it was sort of they knew what was wrong with a restless boy. How were you dealt with as a restless girl? Were you dealt with any differently to the boys that were sort of fidgeting and maybe getting into trouble at all?
I think they treated me this, I was, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I was always a tomboy because my brother and I are very close in age, and my brother has ADHD as well. But unfortunately, well, now he's fine. He's been sober for, I don't know, like 35, 40 years maybe, but he took the wrong path, which most people do with ADHD. They gravitate towards the wrong crowd because they can't fit in with the people who are academically successful. It's very unfortunate. So they self-medicate. So I think I had a lot of the same characteristics as the typical male gender with ADHD.
Mm.
I was, voted class clown when I was in middle school. I was always getting sent to the principal's office. It was just not a good thing. I also came from a home where my mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict. So that was another, let's throw that into the mix, right? She left our family when I was just 10 and my sister was 7 and my brother was 11. So we were kind of like raised like feral cats,
Yeah.
my back then my dad, we couldn't afford a nanny, so we were kind of like on our own during the day. So I don't think that helped because I had no structure. So here you
Mm.
have somebody that's undiagnosed with ADHD, two of us running around in the house,
Yeah.
no structure in the home at all, because my dad was a great dad. He did everything he could to his ability, but he was gone. He had to work 5 days a week.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like a recipe for disaster, but it's all working out. I mean, I don't know how it happened, honestly.
Yeah. You mentioned so you mentioned your brother and his challenges with. Well, did you said sober, so I'm assuming it was alcohol related. But you also mentioned your mother. Sorry if this is sensitive, but have you ever made the leap of wondering because with ADHD can be sort of genetic, as in passed down? Have you ever? I mean, has she completely gone out of your life? Have you ever been able to wonder whether she had ADHD and that was how
Oh,
she dealt with it?
I am 100% certain she had ADHD,
Yeah,
100%, because
yeah.
Well, when she left our family, it was really tragic because didn't want anything to do with us. So we didn't see her for years. Every once in a while, she would come back to the neighborhood, but she would always be in a horrible state. And we
Mm,
didn't really want to see her. So she would make a scene. She was screaming and yelling, and it was just awful. So we wanted her to stay away. Then once her husband died, she wanted back into our lives. And
mm,
I never thought that I would ever have any relationship with my mother for what she did to us.
mm,
But I got older and I started thinking, she had a rough life. She was born in Germany during World War II. My
mm,
grandfather had to buy his way out. They had to live in Cuba for a while. She didn't have the best upbringing. And she had ADHD, so she was making horrible decisions herself.
mm,
And so I thought, okay, we'll have a relationship and it's not going to be the, typical mother-daughter, but I'll do what I can
mm,
to support her. She was unfortunately still drinking to the very end, but what I would do would just come to her house because it would be too embarrassing to take her out with my kids, and then she would
mm,
order drinks and it was a mess. But she could never forgive herself for what she did, and I figured that's punishment enough in itself. I
mm.
mean, I never thought I would take care of her or have a relationship, but my brother and I did take care of her till she passed away.
Yeah.
So it's
It's
weird. It's weird.
it's fascinating in as much as ADHD is, a lot of the challenges that we face, whether it be procrastination or RSD, is very shame driven. And I suppose one, if you don't know that you've got ADHD and you don't know what's going on in your brain, it's very easy to, if you feel like you've made some bad decisions and beat yourself up about it, is to then silence all that shame by diving into whatever will quieten down the noise. And I think, the connection between ADHD and addictions are quite profound as well.
And another thing I realized, I'm always learning more, and I like to learn more about ADHD because I'm living it. So
Mm,
how great to learn something new. And I started to do some research on relationships and how it affects not only, my husband, and he's great. Because he can put up with me. I go 100 miles an hour all day long until I drop at the end of the day. But some of my friends, that I noticed, they say, well, you're just not listening to me, Laurie. You're not listening to what I'm saying. And I said, it's not that I'm not listening to you. It's just that you might be talking too much. And so my brain only hears like two sentences, and then I'm already thinking about something else. You can be
mm.
talking, and my brains are like, okay, well, then what are we going to do after this? And, so I feel bad. And I tell them it's not that I'm not listening to you. Please don't take it personal. I'm trying to work on it my end. I'm trying to stop myself and really focus. But at the same time,
Yeah,
there's only so much I can do.
you're managing a number of conversations when you're listening to
Yes.
somebody, you're listening to what they're saying, but then you've got lots of questions, or I could relate it back to this, and you're trying to sort of manage the voice that you're hearing in your head as well as trying to take in what they're saying, and I think for neurotypical people, it's quite a because nobody knows what it's like to be in somebody else's head, so it's very difficult to explain that to somebody. And it just reminded me of a meme that I saw on social media today. This one husband was laughing at his wife because he was like, she asked me what's going on in your brain when you go to sleep, and he says nothing. I just go off to sleep. And she was, what? So there's no bida boo. Have you switched the oven off? Da, da, da. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and you just think of all these things all the time. And it's interesting too, because I do a lot of endurance events, and I'll go and ride my bike for 5 hours or, whatever it is, and by myself.
Hmm.
And people say to me, how could you do these? How could you go for a bike ride for 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours and you don't listen to music? I said, no, I don't need music. I have
Hmm.
so much going on, so much entertainment in my brain. I don't need anything.
Mm. Yeah. Well, that I have a totally similar thing, but I also find that sometimes I will. to sometimes I can't handle that.
I
So
know.
I will listen to things to stop all my brain, because I suppose it depends where you are and how happy you are overall. Let's just say at work, if you feel like you're on top of things and you're doing a great job, then those thoughts can come in and you can say, oh, well, I've got this space and time to think about that next thing. But if you're not doing so well at work at this particular time and things aren't going so well, all those things that are coming in are things that and add to other things that you're not going to get to complete, and it can make you feel quite down.
Anxious.
And so you're like, need to just stop all these new ideas coming, please. But you mentioned the running and the cycling, and one of the things that I'm assuming you feel like a state of flow when you're in doing those activities.
I do. And also, even when, with my clients, I recommend that they call it a sensory diet, when you're younger. And what that means is find what your threshold is on how long can you actually focus for? When are you most productive? And just don't make yourself sit there or do an activity or project for longer than that period of time without taking a break. So let's say your threshold is 45 minutes. You can be very productive, sit at the computer and do 45 minutes worth of work. Well, work for 45 minutes and then take a break. Go for a walk, fold laundry. I like to get fresh air, do a short bike. I mean, just get out and do something physical. Then come back in and you'll find that you're much more relaxed. And then you could sit back down and get to work again.
Mm. You mentioned earlier that you sort of when you started doing running, when you were, I think it was when you were going to
After the birth of my daughters, when I started running, the first one.
yeah, and it was the planning, the planning thing that got you focused, and it got me thinking about sort of finding the balance between sort of short run jobs, and I'll try and explain what I mean. When I left university and I moved to London, I didn't immediately go into anything that I was qualified to do. I didn't quite know what I was going to do. So I actually just fell into running a restaurant. Well, I was working in the restaurant and then eventually ran it because I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. And one of the things that I didn't like was that, each day, like you might do a double shift, so you sort of work in shifts, and it's very intense. But then there's no residue of anything left. There's no homework afterwards. There's nothing. It's done and dusted, which is quite useful. But I was longing for something to commit to for a longer period of time. I wanted to get my teeth into something. And then on the flip side of when I did start doing that and I started doing longer projects, in web design and things like that, I found the other extreme was like, these projects never end. And I get no satisfaction of completing something with a resolution of happiness and of a feeling of job well done. And I wonder if you found the sweet spot with that, and that was maybe the secret was, finding what length of project gets you engaged enough to get excited into it, get your teeth into it, and then complete it with a result that is satisfying.
Well, I think, yes, I like to set goals for myself with an end result. So
Yeah.
there is that. So it could be with training for an event or signing up for an activity. I don't know. I just got back from Africa,
Hmm.
actually, and I climbed Kilimanjaro. So I trained for the event. I made it to the top. It was accomplishment.
Yeah.
And now I'm already saying, okay, so now what's next? Now what I
Yeah.
just signed up for a century bike ride because I say, okay, now I have to plan this far ahead and I'll have an end result. Now with my work, with the work related goals, there's always a goal in helping people and help them reach their goal. So my goal is for them to reach their goal, if that makes sense. So I can see an end result with my job. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes people aren't ready to move
Hmm.
forward. Sometimes they're so stuck and they're resistant to the tools that you want to provide them that they say they want change, but you have to do the work if you really want change.
Hmm.
And some people aren't ready to do the work, or they're not getting support in their families to do the work. It could be that the families are contributing to them with their maladaptive behaviors. And there's so many factors involved.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, but what I wanted to ask as well was congratulations first of all for climbing Mount. Oh, I'm going to try again.
Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro, yeah.
Thank you.
And my follow-up question to that is, do you ever give yourself time to celebrate and say, "Oh, I've just done something really impressive," or do you just move on to the next thing and then maybe sort of I mean what I suppose I'm driving at is sometimes people can complete a lot of accomplishments but never look back in order to sort of keep a tally of well done and build up the self-esteem. They can be quite dismissive of all the successful things that they've done and then wonder why they feel so low, um because they don't celebrate any wins. Do you allow yourself that luxury?
I'm trying to do that more now. I
Yeah.
think before I wasn't. I think you're spot on with that.
Mm,
I really wasn't giving myself enough credit. And I think even not only with the sports, but academically,
mm,
some of the accomplishments that I was making, when you think of it, or when I think of it, you know, I I don't know how I graduated high school, honestly. I was such a horrible student. I think if it was now, I don't know if they do the testing anymore. They didn't test back then. You just
mm,
had to barely pass a class.
mm.
And I don't think I enjoyed the accomplishments of the past. I think now looking back, maybe I'm enjoying them more now. I wish I would have in the moment, but you're right. I think that's part of, and I don't know if everybody that has ADHD does this or the majority do, but it's like, okay, what's next? All right, I did
Mm.
that. What's next?
Yeah.
Now what's on my list? Now what am I going to do? Whether it's work related or anything else.
Well, I'm this is anecdotal, but I tend to find that it's quite a common answer that I get. People with ADHD, they don't really know how to take, what's the word? People saying that you've done something well.
Like
Um, A
a
compliment,
compliment.
sorry, yeah, I'm forgetting all my
Yeah.
words today. People, they don't know how to take a compliment. But a lot of people are driven by, oh, I'm doing this for external validation. But when they get it, they're like, oh, they don't really mean that. They're just saying that because they're being polite. And it doesn't register with them that they've actually achieved something quite well. And they've just got this imposter syndrome constantly.
I think you're right. And it's funny because I think of that and I went to a social function for individuals, developmental or not neurotypical. I don't know all the terminology changes all the time.
Mm,
Anyway, I went to a function and one of the parents introduced me and she said, and Laurie just hiked Kilimanjaro. And she also last year she biked across the United States and it's really amazing. And I said, oh no, it's not that big a deal, really. And
mm.
somebody said, yeah, it really is kind of a big deal. Not a lot of people do those things. And I
No,
think, oh, I guess they don't. But to me,
I
you're
mean,
right. It's a compliment. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. I mean, the US is pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an exciting adventure.
Yeah, I bet. So let's have a look at some of the things that you do in terms
Sure.
of the behavior analyst and the CBT. Now, you did mention that you what drove you into that was a number of tragedies in your life, and so you were you were looking to see what you could do to help families. Is that correct?
Yes. So I wanted to, initially I thought, oh, I'll be a social worker because I can help the families in the hospital. And then I got to thinking, no, I really don't want to do that. I'm not sure what I want to do, but I do want to help families. And I ended up getting a job working with individuals with developmental disabilities as a behavior specialist, which meant
Mhm.
back then, because that was about 25 years ago, we would go into the homes and we would implement behavioral plans. We would see how that, how can we change the environment and how can we help the individual and the families. And then I thought, my boss he's not the best person to work for. Maybe I should just go back to graduate school and open my own business, you know? So
Mm.
with the ADHD, it's like, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not thinking like, okay, well, you know, you have 2 years of school, 3 years to, you know, collect your 3,000 hours and another year to take your exam. But you know what? I just did it. I just dove right in like everything else, not doing the research. And I ended up during that time making a name for myself in the county. And what I found was when I was in graduate school, I went to therapy for the first time because
Hmm.
they said, hey, if you go to therapy, we'll count 10 hours of therapy as 100 hours towards your licensing. And I thought, oh, that's great. Since I'm going to be a licensed therapist, I should probably go anyway.
Hmm.
And once I started talking about myself and my childhood and all of that, the therapist said, you know, you've had a lot of trauma in your life, Laurie. And I said,
Mm.
really? I'd never really thought about it. I've always just pushed everything down
Mm.
and not dealt with it. So it was at that time I myself started having panic attacks and I couldn't drive on the freeway. And it was horrible because in my job I had to drive. So I thought, well, I've got to start using some techniques. And I combined, she was telling me to do deep breathing in the office. You've got to do deep breathing. Okay, well, that's fine. You're suggesting that, but I need a visual. I'm a very
Mm.
visual learner,
Yeah.
especially with ADHD, right? You
Hmm.
could tell me something, but you know, I really need something visual. So I thought, what about a traffic light? Because red means stop, yellow means make a choice, and green means go. So I took a shot glass and an index card and I made 3 circles on it and I colored them in red, yellow, and green. And every time I knew I was going to get anxious about going on the freeway. So I'd have that little card next to me and I would say, okay, red, stop. You need to stop whatever you're thinking. So cognitively, I'm telling myself to stop those thoughts. You need to stop what you're thinking. Yellow, make a choice, turn on the radio, start your deep breathing, go. That's what green means.
Hmm.
So I started using that with my clients as well. You know, red means stop, yellow means make a choice, green means go. So what I did was I used the cognitive behavioral part of it is, you know, our thoughts create emotions, and those emotions can be positive or negative. They can be expressed in a maladaptive way where it could be skin picking, biting your nails, overeating, procrastinating, whatever it is, those thoughts are creating emotions and they're exhibited through our behavior.
Hmm.
So the cognitive part is how do we change those negative thoughts and get you to think something positive?
Hmm.
Well, we can first we need to find out what's happening just before you have that negative thought. You know, what is happening? Are you you know, whatever it may, for me it was going on the freeway. You
Yeah.
know, for that was the antecedent to my anxiety. For somebody else it might be sitting down at the computer. Maybe they overeat when they're at the computer. So the cognitive part is how do we change those emotions? The behavioral aspect is how do we change your environment to help you change your behavior?
Hmm.
So what if the signal card, what if I had a signal card right by my computer and I had a list of things like have a glass of water, and then you can take a break and have a snack at such and such a time, but you know, don't have food, maybe a picture of you when you were of a nice outfit you want to buy that you if you want to lose 10 pounds, whatever it is, some type of visuals to change your environment. So the cognitive part is how do we change your thoughts, and the behavioral part is how do we change your environment to help you change your behavior.
Right. That, yeah, I think I was wanting to ask you what the difference between CBT and behavioral analysis was, but the way you've just explained that is makes sense to me. And do you find we've just mentioned the visual element there. I would find that very useful as well. Do you find that people who haven't got ADHD, do they need the visual element as much or
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And then also I want to add, and I'll go back to that, but I also want to add that I also work with families because families are contributing to the behavior, whether they
Hmm.
realize it or not. So, you know, when my clients come in to see me, they get a data sheet, and that data sheet has the antecedent behavior and consequence. What happened just before the behavior occurred? What were you thinking or feeling? And then what was the behavior exactly? Did you get sick? Did you feel sick to your stomach? Did you get a headache? Did you start breathing heavy? Whatever, whatever it is that was happening. And then what was a consequence of your behavior? Did your mom, did your dad, did your partner say, "Oh my gosh, can I help you? Oh, let me do this for you because you're not feeling well." So are they actually contributing to the existence of that maladaptive behavior? And a lot of times, so they get their own data sheet from their perspective. What do they see as happening, and how are they contributing to the behavior? And they would get their own plan to help remind the individual, hey, red, stop; yellow, let's make a choice; green,
Mm.
let's breathe together, or whatever, whatever tool that we implement at the time.
Yeah, because
Um,
I find it might be one thing to have, talk through it with somebody, whether it be a therapist or you're just talking through emotions with your partner or whatever. And that can be very helpful in the moment to understand what's going on. But the next time you're in that situation again, unless you've got something there to what remind you what the plan was and what's going to help, it's quite easy to just address. You get to the next time you're in that situation with blinkers on and go, oh, I'm just going to do the same old thing.
Right. And another thing that I do, or we do at my company, is that sets us apart is the accountability. So when you come in, I gather information. It's kind of like a detective. You get your data sheets. We come back, you come back in, we analyze the data together. I might have the partner come in and they're there for the first 15 minutes or so, so we can review that, and they may leave, or you may want them there the entire time. Once I have enough information, then we put a behavioral plan together in a notebook.
Mhm.
And in that notebook is also a weekly schedule. So you will be accountable for practicing these techniques at least once a day.
Mhm.
And you will take data on, did you use a strategy? Yes or no? Was it helpful? So I'm continuing to make you accountable once you leave my office. I'm not just telling you, okay, when that happens again, let's take some deep breath. Remember to take deep breaths. Well,
Mhm.
I tell my clients, it's like training for an event, like a 10K. You can't sign up for a 10K and not run it all up until race day. You show up. That's like you have a test or an event or a project you're working on, but you don't do any of the work and you show up on, project day with nothing to do. You have to plan what you're going to do. You have to practice these techniques together. And then you come back in my office and we say, okay, did you practice? Did it work? If it didn't work, what can we do to help you utilize these strategies? There was something else you said before that, before the accountability. Do you remember what it
I
was?
was I was talking about the visual element of it, I
Oh,
think. Yeah.
right. So visuals are huge, especially with people that have, well, they call it executive functioning
Yeah.
disorder, right? But I think it's ADHD or
Yeah.
ADD, really.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a new terminology for it. Not so new, but okay, yeah, I can help you with your executive functioning. Let's get started. First of all, where are you doing your work? And 9 times out of 10, they say, oh, I have my laptop and I'm in my bed. Well,
Mm.
that's not going to work. Okay, so let's get a working environment that is clutter free, and we're going to set you up for success. So again, we're using behavioral techniques to set you up for success. It's environmental. Then I still use an actual planner that you open, and a daily planner that you write things in. It's in pencil, so I can erase it. But I
Hmm.
think, especially people with ADHD, the phone thing doesn't work. You have to have a planner that you open up and you can see what it is that you have to do, and you write it in, and you write in, okay, I have to run at, well, this morning I have to run at 6 a.m. I have my podcast at 7:30, and then I do this at 9:15. So my day is planned out.
Yeah.
It's a visual, and I have my clients with ADHD do the same. Like I said, I have them take breaks in there. They bring their planner. I said, bring your planner to the office. We're going to go over it together.
Well, I had the exactly what you're describing about having a planner. I had the same thought process the other day. I ordered a wall planner for the year because, I'm getting better at using my digital calendar, as in putting things in there so that I'm not missing events and things like that. But the problem I have with the digital thing is that next week doesn't exist. It's only what
No.
I keep seeing.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'll get to my desk on a Monday and I'll go, "Oh, I've not prepared for that because I didn't see it. I didn't see it last week." And so I wanted to get a wall planner in for the year so that I can say, "All right, if I want to go on holiday, I need to book it, and it's not too far away, so I need to prepare for this. Or if I have got a holiday booked in, maybe I need to get this finished before then, rather than, and so yeah, I completely get that. And what else you said, you wrote in pencil. It arrived, and I looked at it and I went, "Oh, I thought I'd ordered a laminated one," because I knew that as soon as it wasn't laminated, I thought, I'm not going to write on that now because I'll make a mistake. I can't
Yes.
commit to it. I need to know that I can change it.
And that's the beauty is of the pencil. It used to be that I wrote in ink and I'd have to use a whiteout. I did that for years using whiteout. I don't even know if they make it anymore. And then I
Oh,
finally thought, why am I not using a pencil so I can erase it? Because things change all the time and I'm okay with that. But I have to
that
erase it.
reminded me of, wasn't it that NASA invented, you spent, thousands and thousands of pounds developing, a pencil, no, a pen that worked underwater, or, I don't know why it was worked underwater, but or something that worked on the moon, and the Russians took a pencil.
Yeah, right. Now that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. And then I know that you're probably mentioned my book, right? But I do want to
Yes.
say that in the book, I talk about myself and my own anxiety and how I
Hmm.
went through all of that. It also has 6 different case studies in there.
Yeah.
And I think that people can identify to some of those case studies. I wanted to put it in there. I was thinking, what are some of the most problematic case studies that I've had that were interesting and I thought readers would find interesting and they were actually able to utilize the tools in there. I also talk about what it looks like when you come into my office, and in the back of the book there's actually a tool kit so that it has the behavior sheets that I was talking about.
Hmm.
It has those data sheets, it has the signal card in there, it has also what I call it's a motivational story. And what that means, I think it's a really important piece of the treatment plan because from the information you share for me, I write an individualized story, which you'll be able to do yourself with the book. But it starts off with like, my name is Lawrence. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, but that does not define who I am.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm stuck, but I'm going to move forward in my life. And it just puts in a little more detail personal things about you. And it's kind of like an affirmation and a
Mm.
motivational story that my clients or our clients are supposed to read at least once a day in the
Yeah.
morning to get their day started.
Yeah. And I think that's incredibly powerful. You can say, oh, you can define your values and purpose and have affirmations. And I think particularly here in the UK, people will be like, ah, yeah, that's not very important. Yeah, yeah, sure, I've got them. But if you don't actually identify them, sit down at least once and decide what is more important to you when something new comes in, you've got ADHD and you're quite impulsive, and some shiny new object comes in, you've got no framework to say, is this going to be a distraction that's going to distract me from this really important purpose-driven goal that I've got? Or, if you ignore the work of defining what your story is, or what you want your story to be, then you're endlessly going to be just drifting and being taken by all sorts of distractions.
I know. And I think that's why I think goal setting is so important, no matter what it is. Like,
Mm.
like you said, if you have your planner on your wall and you say, this is due on this date, and you go back and you say, okay, so that means the week prior, I should have a summary completed. And the week before that, I'm going to work on it maybe 2 times, like on a
Yeah.
Tuesday or Thursday for an hour, whatever it is. Otherwise, when that shiny new object comes in, you're going to hold it and you're going to look at your planner and say, okay, this is really cool, but I need to get this done. This is in my planner and this needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, only last night I had an idea and immediately bought 5 or 6 URLs. And then I thought I need to have a little think after I'd bought them. I thought I need to have a little think, is this going to be a distraction? I should have obviously done that before I did it, but it was difficult not to. And fortunately it did tick all the boxes. But yeah, it's quite easy. I mean, I've done that many times before,
Oh,
and they haven't been anywhere near being useful. I mean, if you were to look at my, I have an Udemy account for, these online learning websites, and that would be a podcast in itself just to go through that and say, what were you thinking when you bought this? I mean, have you learned to play the drums yet? No.
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I know. But I think as we get older, we're a little, I'm a little easier on myself now, I think. I mean, I try to be. Um, it's just I am more aware, which I think is good. Like you are now, you're more aware. I mean, you're still
Mm.
kind of doing it, but at least you're like, oh, okay, well, that was a mistake where maybe you wouldn't even have recognized it as a mistake before. So you're more aware of that.
I mean, my ability to even believe I had made a mistake when, I would say even into my 30s, it was just creeping in then. And I was like, I was able to go, oh, do you know what? I think I was in the wrong then. And that was, I mean, that was a game changer. I mean, I think the first time you go to therapy is an opportunity for you to say, okay, I'm willing to accept that I need to change some things. And but before then, I think whether it's the exuberance of youth or or what, but yeah, being open to change is something that possibly becomes easier with age.
Well, at least self-awareness. Change is still hard, but I think if you're some type of change, like even the fact that, like I was saying before, trying to focus on what some people are saying if they go on, I really do make an effort. So I think that part has changed for me, and doing more investigating before signing up for things. Cause like you with the buying, that was me with events. I mean, that race, 100-mile race, sure, I'll do that. 50
Mm,
miles, sure, I'll do that, without even thinking it's a long way. And,
yeah.
I would just do it without, or going traveling somewhere and not doing any research on where I was going, and then getting there and saying, okay, now what do I do?
Hmm.
Um, so I think I am getting better at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So in the book, You're Not Crazy, Living with Anxiety, Obsessions and Fetishes. Um, so is that the way that is structured, then that is basically you said you had case studies in there, and then examples of tools. Why did you pick those three: anxiety, obsessions, and fetishes? I mean, obviously there's an ADHD podcast, but I mean, do you find that ADHD sits in there as a recognizable element of those different things?
I think that a lot of individuals that have the OCD behavior, obsessive compulsive
Hmm.
disorder, do have an ADD component,
Hmm.
where they are distracted. And I think that the compulsion, their desire to repeat a behavior over and over, whatever that is, could be driven by their inability. They're hyper focused on something that isn't healthy,
Hmm.
the OCD, but they don't get anything done in their life that they need to finish because they have become so driven with this compulsion. So I think there is a component to it. And I also think that a lot of individuals that we've worked with, there's dual diagnoses. People have dual diagnoses all
Yeah.
the time, which means you can have autism And you can be bipolar, you can have autism, and you can have ADD, you can be ADD and bipolar. I mean, it's not saying that there's one or the other, and that ADD tends to cling on to a lot of the other diagnoses.
Yeah. When as things of jumping into my head now, and when you said the OCD, I was thinking about I get my clients to do a saboteur's assessment as well as a skills strengths assessment, but one of the saboteurs is a stickler. Everything has to be done specifically, and I think that probably falls into the OCD category. But I'm just wondering if I'm in understanding, as part of your title, you got fetishes in there, and are we talking about the kink side of things, or a different interpretation of the word fetish? Because I was wondering if the stickler or specific thing was an overlap into that as well.
Well, the problem with the individuals we work with obviously have gotten to a point in their life where they need help. That's why they
Yeah,
come to us, right? Not everybody with
yeah,
a fetish is getting arrested. Not everybody with a fetish is having, amount of trouble that the people that have come to see us. But even people with OCD have hit a spot, or ADHD have
mhm,
hit a spot where they are feeling lost. They don't know what to do. And so the particular case that I have in my book talks about an individual who, well, he paired his pleasure in himself
yeah.
while he was in the bathroom, and he was a teenager. And at the time, there was his younger brother or sister was in the house, and so there was dirty diapers in the trash can. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so he paired that, right?
Yeah.
That visual, that smell, whatever it was, with him pleasuring himself. So now you have this strong
Okay.
bond, and yeah. But it can lead to, I had another client who had a tactile fetish to like bathing suits, that type of
Hmm.
spandex material. And it was before it was more acceptable for individuals like males to purchase female clothes, and to, kind of, it's okay now to wear, a woman's bathing suit, whatever it is. It wasn't as acceptable back then.
Yeah.
And so he was lurking around his apartment and stealing things from the dryer.
Yeah.
So typically we get cases, or I would get cases, our company, when somebody's in trouble of maybe getting fired from their job, maybe getting kicked out of their apartment, possibly in trouble with the law. So, that's when we come into play.
Yeah. And I think specifically with ADHD, and I'm thinking when I do work on self-awareness with my coaching clients, and even when I've just sat down with them and done the strengths assessment, because of the ADHD, I have to say, right, even though these are your strengths and these are the things that you're really good at, we need to moderate it a little bit to make sure that you're not overdoing those strengths and burning out, because you become obsessed with it. And
Right,
and and
right.
I can see how these other behaviors, that when we were just talking, we're not saying that any of these behaviors are wrong, in the broader sense, but if you've got ADHD and then you just really sort of hyper focus on them, and then to the detriment of everything else, it can, that's where you might face the challenges, is that you're not living in balance, and burning out, or getting into sticky situations.
Right. And I think I know myself have gotten to where I could burn out, because but that was before I was aware I had it. I think now, making myself more aware, I can look back and say, wow, I'm lucky I made it through all that, the way I was pushing myself so hard in these other areas. But you mentioned something about, and this is what I tell my clients, whatever their diagnosis is, ADHD, look at it as a gift. You're looking at it the wrong way. Once we can figure out how you learn, I mean, when you think about it, people with ADHD are, yes, they're impulsive, but they make decisions where other people would procrastinate on. And so
Mhm.
we get ourselves in situations where it could, I mean, look where I am today. I would have never have thought, oh, sure, I'll do that. I'll go back to graduate school. Yeah, I'll open my own practice, without even thinking about really, well, what if it doesn't work? What if, what if you have to do this? What if this happens? I didn't think about it. I just did it.
Hmm.
So
I suppose it's a bit of a challenge, because presumably when people come to you, they're not coming to you at a point in their lives where they say, "Hey, I've got ADHD. Can we just spend an hour celebrating that?"
yeah,
They're
no,
coming they're
not at all.
coming they're coming to you because they've hit a block, or they've really found it something challenging, that they're coming to you with something which is in inverted commas a superpower, but they've come to you at a time when they're struggling to manage it, and it is a shame that you can't celebrate it more, um because it is a fantastic thing. I mean, I wouldn't change my I wouldn't change the way my brain thinks per se, apart from all the bad bits that does it, that stops me from. I wouldn't want to have somebody else's brain, but I would like, to be able to manage it better, which, with
Yes,
CBT
yes.
and other things, we can do. So I'm aware that we're sort of coming up to our time to end. So what's the future hold for you?
Well, the future is interesting right now because, I'll be 65 very soon. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I love what I do. I love
Hmm.
doing the podcast now. I love getting the word out to other people. I think it's
Hmm.
very exciting. I'm actually started my new book now, trying to figure out, and it's kind of based on the ADHD part of it. And I'm
Hmm.
trying to figure out some of the things that I've gotten myself into over the years. Was it environmental or was it the biological ADHD part of who I am?
Hmm.
So I'm trying to work on that, which I think is very exciting. My eldest daughter, who does not have ADHD, which is probably a good thing for her, because I'm passing her the business. She's been with me for about
Hmm.
15 years now, and she's a licensed psychotherapist, and she's getting ready to take her national board certification. But she's kind of taking over. So now I can travel more
Ah.
and just experience different things, which is really cool. I
Mhm.
think I'm kind of getting addicted to things like that.
Yeah. Do you find it easy to write?
I do. I just
Ah,
like spills out. You know why?
yeah.
Because it gets me to look at events that have happened. There are certain things that have happened in my life, different just different things that have happened. So when I go back and write about it, it's very cathartic, I
Hmm.
think. And I just really enjoy it.
Mm. No, I love the idea of writing more. I've out but I struggle to get from the idea out of my head and onto paper, or typing it out on the computer. So I can sit there for hours and develop an idea in my head, but I become too self-critical once I start putting it to I'm sort of editing too quickly, and there's obviously some you know critical element of me, or criticism of myself, that is saying, no, this isn't going to be perfect, so stop, stop, stop. But so do you find that element, do you find that you're able to edit later and you can get into a flow where it just comes out, or are you quite good at sort of getting it right first time?
No, I'm not. No, are you kidding? The editing is the longest part. Writing the book is the easy part. It's the
Uh-huh.
once you work with an editor and they're like, no, you have to do this. No, you have to do that. So when you work with a good editor, they will tell you what you need to rewrite. And
Yeah.
really, that's where the work really comes in. What I would suggest to help you get started is take one situation and just title it,
Mhm.
and then write about that, and then take another situation and write about that. Don't try to piece the whole thing together, and don't try to worry about where it's going to grow, where it's going to go in your book. Just pick one topic to write
Mm.
about and just let it flow.
Mm. I think you mentioned possibly there's an element as well. You mentioned that, working with an editor. I wonder if there's a part of me that thinks I have to do everything myself. Every sort of new hobby that I learn, I think I need to do this, and maybe this is part of my sort of external validation, is I need to do this so so that people will say that was really good. And so opening myself up for other people to help me with it is, there's I know that's not a good thing, but I tend to not allow other people in, thinking that I've got to complete it myself. But you end up, the reasons why people are editors, because it's a really difficult skill to have, and to expect yourself to be able to pick it up and then do it well
Right.
is
And that,
impossible.
right. And that's the whole thing. That's their specialty. You need somebody who specializes in that.
Mm,
And what they do, trust me, you're going to be doing the rewriting.
yeah.
They're just going to tell you this doesn't work. What
Mm,
does this mean? You need to do this. So you'll still be doing the work. They're kind of like a professor
mm,
reading your paper and saying, no, that doesn't work. No, okay, what do you mean by this? Now you have to expand on this. Can so you are doing the writing. It's just that they're kind of telling you what you need to do to make it better.
mhm. Well, I'll let you know if I manage to start any writing on my on my
Yes, I would
book.
love to read it. That
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
great.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm just thinking, because the idea that I had yesterday would involve writing a book for that as well. So and at some point, I'm going to have to get over it and do it. One was a novel, and one was a business thing. But
We'll
yeah,
start on one.
yeah. That's always the problem as well, is starting one thing and then
Put it on
starting
your
another.
planner. You need to put it on your planner.
Yeah. Well, I would love to have you back on the show when you finish your book that you're working on now. I think that sounds fascinating as well. But thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, it's been
And
very fun, Lawrence. Thank you.
yeah, and congratulations again for Mount Kilimanjaro, and also the cycling across the states. That's all very, very incredible things to have done.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All
Best
right.
of luck to you. Okay.
Okay, take care. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye.
Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you want to hear more episodes, then please subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps to spread the word. So if you know anyone this episode could help, then please share it with your friends. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram at ADHD_goals, and you can find me on Facebook too. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you can email me at hello@adhdgoals.co. And finally, if you're struggling to manage your ADHD and you would like me to be your coach, then please head over to my website and get in touch. Until next time, bye for now.